Bloomberg Audio Studios. Podcasts, radio, news. You're listening to the Bloomberg Balance of Power podcast. Catch us live weekdays at noon and 5 p.m. Eastern on Apple CarPlay and Android Auto with the Bloomberg Business app. Listen on demand wherever you get your podcasts or watch us live on YouTube.
Monday bringing a lot of news, much of which broke over the weekend, including the president's 180 on the Jeffrey Epstein files. As we try to get to the bottom of all of this, and we'll be talking in a moment with Wendy Benjaminson, we'll bring you back to the Truth Social post. This hit on Sunday, as he said on Friday night aboard Air Force One to the fake news media, as he writes here, House Republicans should vote to release the Epstein files because, he says, we have nothing to hide. And it's time to move on from this Democrat hoax, he writes, perpetrated by radical left lunatics in order to deflect from the great success of the Republican Party. Knowing as well that only days earlier, Congresswoman Lauren Boebert was in the Situation Room at the White House for a high-stakes meeting with the president in which the administration tried to peel her off of the discharge petition. He was said to be playing phone tag with Nancy Mace to accomplish the same thing. He had a falling out with a dear friend and loyal politician named Marjorie Taylor Greene, you've likely heard of, all to keep this from happening. And so it's considered curious the president is now urging Republicans to vote for it. Ro Khanna, the Democrat on this bill, told us last week 40 to 50 Republicans could vote for it. Now we're hearing from Tom Massey it could be closer to 100. Rick Davis, our Bloomberg Politics contributor, suggesting it could be a unanimous vote in the House, which would make it very difficult for the Senate to ignore. So what's the calculus here? And is this new investigation into Democrats purported to be in the Epstein files the smokescreen for them ever being released? It's where we start our conversation with the aforementioned Wendy Benjaminson, Bloomberg News senior editor, who you want on that wall. She was on duty all weekend while this stuff broke, and it's great to see you. Thank you for going through the motions here. Yeah. Am I getting warmer, or has Donald Trump found religion on the Epstein files?
You know, what you sort of said in the opening, it's really hard to tell with Donald Trump because he's either a bull careening into a china shop or he's playing four-dimensional chess.
Okay.
Like, I don't know. It could be that he's had it up to here. He's fed up. Yep. Just go ahead and release them. Perhaps he's either, and even now I have subparagraphs here. Either he is confident that there's nothing incriminating that he did in there, or the House can say, go ahead and release the files. It may not pass the Senate. He may not sign it. Or the Justice Department can just say, wow, this is an ongoing investigation, and sorry, I can't release it. And then he would get what he wants. But that's more the four-dimensional chess thing here. But yes, the shift is absolutely remarkable. Also, remember, he took a shellacking in the elections, to quote President Obama a couple of weeks ago, where Democrats swept all the elections. Then, of course, they caved on the shutdown. But he's at a point where he's feeling a little bit with his back to the wall. And that's, when I think you have to watch for strange things to happen, like go ahead and release the files.
Yeah. Also, his evolution on Nick Fuentes and the writing, maybe it's not an evolution, but his decision to weigh in on this.
The funny thing about that was where his defense was, well, he came with Kanye West. It was like, okay.
When you're explaining, as they say, but it's also happening against the backdrop of some very high stakes real policy, with affordability being an issue here at home.
Right.
The Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia about to arrive for the full flourish of a state visit tomorrow. Right. And the question of whether we're about to go to war in Venezuela. How do you rationalize all of these extremes?
This is the way Donald Trump likes to operate. But it is, just as you point out, this is a tremendous load on him. I mean, there is the Saudi visit alone should be weeks and weeks of prep for the president. Right. The carrier group being staged off the coast of South America with who knows what going on. And remember, the Southcom commander quit.
That's right.
Over this a few weeks ago. So we're not really sure who's running things and how this is going. And then the Epstein files, and then the shutdown, and then, yes, the midterms, politically speaking, are right around the corner, even though they're a year away. But that is politically zero time. And if he doesn't successfully seize this affordability message, which the Democrats got right finally on last Tuesday, then he's looking at another shellacking next year. And so, this is a really tough time for him.
Add the matter of recrafting the nation's healthcare system, and you might need a little extra time on your hands here. What's going to happen in Venezuela? Do we have any idea? The president said at one point he had decided effectively what to do, and then a headline over the weekend that you're well aware of, that he's open to sitting down with Maduro for talks.
Yeah.
Is this all one big military deterrent that's supposed to bring Maduro to the table?
Yes, I mean, I think that's the end goal, is either to bring Maduro to the table or, like Noriega, out of the country.
Got it.
Way back in the old days when they got rid of the
So regime change is
dictator.
still on your list of possibilities.
Yeah, and, the U.S. has a long history of regime change in South America. And, the trouble is the Venezuelan people, I think, are not entirely opposed to they're not opposed to getting rid of Maduro, but it's always the then what. And I think if Trump did seem to indicate last night that he was open to negotiations with Maduro. Maybe it's you step down and get out of town. Maybe it's something more complicated. Again, there isn't a lot of transparency here.
You surely remember the fist bump heard around the world when Joe Biden went to Saudi Arabia. Jamal Khashoggi's name was still fresh in our minds. There won't be any such criticism or skepticism when MBS rolls up the driveway tomorrow in the age of Trump, will there?
No, this is a full-on, I think it's not quite a state visit, but it's just shy of a full state visit. He's getting dinner at the White House. There is a chips deal on the table, which is making some members of Congress and others nervous because some of that could end up with the Chinese. He wants, the prince wants F-35 jets. He wants to buy those, which would be a change in U.S. policy because U.S. longstanding policy has been that Israel has functional military superiority, or words to that effect, so that Israel always has the strongest military in the region. They have F-35s. And not only does the U.S. not want China to get the F-35 technology, it also then would put Saudi Arabia at not equal, but it would raise up their military capabilities vis-a-vis Israel. MBS is not going to sign the Abraham Accords at this point. And so that's maybe the one point of tension between them. But otherwise, it's all a big deal. And quite remember, the Trump family has a real estate deal going in Saudi Arabia right now. Deep ties on a lot of levels here. Wendy, it's great to see you. Thank you. I hope you actually get to rest after your very newsy weekend. When you see these headlines cross the terminal and Bloomberg.com over the weekend, you know where they're coming from. Wendy Benjaminson, thank you. As we add the voice of experience in former Ambassador James Jeffrey, Distinguished Fellow at the Washington Institute for Near East Policy, former ambassador to Iraq and Turkey, former Deputy National Security Advisor and former Special Assistant, presidential envoy, I should say, to defeat ISIS. That was in the first Trump administration. He's a man who knows this region extremely well. And Ambassador, it's good to have you back. You were just listening to our conversation with Wendy Benjaminson. MBS will be at the White House by this time tomorrow. We're going to be listening in on a bilateral lunch that will presumably include some press. How are you viewing the stakes surrounding this visit, and what is in it for the United States?
Thanks for having me on. The stakes are high, and a great deal is in it for the United States. We were talking about four-dimensional chess on the Epstein case domestically a moment ago. It's the same in the Middle East. While Saudi Arabia is a hugely important country in the region and for U.S. relations, this is even bigger than Saudi Arabia. It's locking in a regional security, trade, and diplomatic coalition that will build on the defeat first of Daesh, the Islamic State, about 7 years ago, and now the defeat of Iran, its proxy empire, over the past 2 years, to allow the region finally to enjoy peace, prosperity, political independence, and allow the United States slowly to back out of the region. So lots at stake. The Saudis, like the Israelis, like the Turks, like a couple of other countries, are central to it. Trump is pushing forward on all of these fronts.
And what does Saudi Arabia get out of this visit, Ambassador?
First of all, acknowledgement. This is almost a state visit, although technically the Crown Prince is the Crown Prince, not the King. The King is still there. But he's also getting to build on the Biden fist bump forgiveness for the Khashoggi case. But more importantly, he needs economic coordination. He needs U.S. investment. He has promised $600 billion in Saudi investment in the U.S., and that's a good deal for Saudi Arabia, given the way our economy is cooking. But also, he wants progress on a pathway, that's the word we're using now, to a Palestinian state. That is a requirement before the Abraham Accords. He wants a nuclear accord. He wants a deal like we just gave to the state of Qatar, that is an executive order stipulating that any attack on Saudi Arabia or attack on its territorial integrity would be seen as an attack on the United States. That's what the Qataris just got. The Saudis will want that too. They will probably get something like it.
They'll probably get something like it. How about F-35 fighter jets?
I think that there'll have to be more progress on the Abraham Accords and more assuaging of the Israelis. As Wendy said, the Israeli military advantage is a critical part of our relationship with Israel and the whole region. But, for example, the Israelis use a lot of F-16s. Other countries in the region have F-16s. There are ways to work this, but it is sensitive and it's delicate.
When the president was in Riyadh in May, Ambassador, he said, talking about MBS, remember there was this big love fest. The president brought a number of executives with him from the United States, and he said, I like him a lot. I like him too much. What do you think he meant by that?
It's a riff on how you hear a lot of people in the Middle East who are native Arab speakers use very. We hear this all the time, and Trump along the way has picked it up and was using it back. But what he means is, this is my guy.
You know, he had the new president of Syria with him in the Oval Office quite recently, Ambassador, and that raised a lot of eyebrows. It's not something that we would have even considered a couple of months ago, as this was an individual involved in a Syrian a branch of al-Qaeda. How does that inform this meeting tomorrow?
Very much, because Syria is another critical piece, and here Trump has, by embracing, literally, al-Shara, formerly al-Julani, he's signaling how important Syria and Syrian involvement in this growing region-wide coalition is. I worked indirectly with al-Shara in the first Trump administration. He was fighting the real bad guys, the Islamic State, as early as 2016. Importantly, he was also fighting the Russians, Iran, and Assad. So he might have been a former terrorist, but he was a former terrorist who was effectively on our side. And we have honored that with his visit to the United States last week.
Does a global deal, to the extent that you're describing, involving potentially investment here, direct foreign investment, fighter jets, maybe even more than that, Ambassador, make the United States safer?
Yes. First of all, we've remained safe, all in all, since the 1940s by the same recipe, which is keep the global Eurasian island free of domination by a single power or a coalition that is hostile to us, by working by, with, and through other countries, be it China and France and Britain in World War II, be it the NATO alliance, be it our friends in the Middle East. This allows us, with only 3% of our gross national product going to defense, to maintain a relatively stable world and that is secure and peaceful, not only for the American people, but for people all around the world. And that's a huge plus for global development, for economic trade, and everything else that's important to the American family.
You mentioned in the outset a Palestinian state and the extent to which Saudi Arabia would like to engage the U.S. on this. Where's Donald Trump's head here? He's spoken around this issue a bit, knowing, of course, what has transpired in Gaza. That's something that MBS is not very fond of, is he?
He's not fond of the terrible deprivations of the Gazan people, but he's very happy that one of Iran's major arms, Hamas, has been defeated. And he will be happy if President Trump continues pushing for, in the language we're using in our latest diplomatic statements, is a pathway to a Palestinian state. That's not a Palestinian state, and that has made the Israelis nervous, or at least some Israelis, but nonetheless, it's where Trump is now, and it will help him in these meetings tomorrow with the Crown Prince.
How long is that pathway? Is that beyond this president's tenure?
Well, we started 30 years ago with the Oslo Accords. And we came very close in 2000, in the view of then President Clinton. The fault was the Palestinian leader, Yasser Arafat, who could not take a deal when one was offered. The overall question is, are the Palestinians really, in their hearts, willing to accept a Jewish Israel as a neighbor? And that question has not been finally answered. We also need to know if all Israelis are willing to let the West Bank eventually be on a pathway to a separate state, given the claims of settlers. So there's several things at play here. But nonetheless, President Trump is pushing this, as all presidents have before him.
I'm really glad we could have this conversation ahead of the visit, Ambassador. Good to see you. James Jeffrey, Distinguished Fellow, Washington Institute for Near East Policy, and a voice of experience in the region. He's been in the room. We'll assemble our political panel next, only here on Balance of Power on Bloomberg.
Stay with us on Balance of Power. We'll have much more coming up after this.
You're listening to the Bloomberg Balance of Power podcast. Catch us live weekdays at noon and 5 p.m. Eastern on Apple CarPlay and Android Auto with the Bloomberg Business app. You can also listen live on Amazon Alexa from our flagship New York station. Just say, Alexa, play Bloomberg 1130.
This is quite a day in politics, as the president, who had been at least leaning away from the Epstein story, not one to mention Nick Fuentes, is now embracing both. Michelle Jamrisko at my side today. When it comes to Epstein, we've got a vote tomorrow, a discharge petition that's going to force this floor vote on the Epstein files. President's just decided to rip off the Band-Aid. He is now urging Republicans to vote for it instead of the opposite.
And he's giving them the freedom to do what perhaps they would have done anyway, I think is the point here. That he's seen the writing on the wall that they want to move a certain direction, and maybe he was going to lose the vote, so why not own it?
Why not own it? Writing on Truth Social, House Republicans should vote to release the Epstein files because we have nothing to hide. And it's time to move on, he says. The House Oversight Committee can have whatever they are legally entitled to. I don't care. Exclamation point. Having just days ago brought the likes of Congresswoman Boebert to the Situation Room to try to convince her to take her name off the discharge petition. Remember, Ro Khanna told us last week could be 30 or 40 Republicans voting for this on the floor. Tom Massey said on Sunday morning TV it could be 100. And in that world, will the Senate have any choice? Will the president? Enter Nick Fuentes. This is the other big one, Michelle, that's been dogging the White House and splitting, in many cases, Republicans after Tucker Carlson interviewed the notorious, what am I supposed to call him? White nationalist? I mean, seriously.
Well,
provocateur?
I think to the extent that he embraces those labels himself, you can call him what
fair enough, he does,
embracing.
Right?
So, yeah, I mean, it's another tricky subject that's kind of splitting the MAGA world apart, and interesting that we heard the president weigh in on this.
You've had the Heritage Foundation backing Tucker Carlson. A lot of folks in the Republican Party, a lot of folks in the MAGA world don't believe Tucker Carlson should be platforming an individual like Fuentes, who will remind everybody had dinner with the president at one point. Donald Trump was asked about this over the weekend down in West Palm Beach. Here's what he said.
We've had some great interviews with Tucker Carlson, but you can't tell him who to interview. I mean, if he wants to interview Nick Fuentes, I don't know much about him, but if he wants to do it, get the word out. Let him, people have to decide. Ultimately, people have to decide.
All right, I don't know what get the word out means. It's a really interesting response. If he wants to interview Nick Fuentes, I don't know much about him, but if he wants to do it, get the word out. Let him. He said people have to decide. Ultimately, people have to decide. Let's assemble our panel for their take on this move across the board by Donald Trump to lean into the opposition. Rick Davis and Jeannie Shanzano are with us, Bloomberg Politics contributors. Rick is our Republican strategist and partner at Stone Court Capital. Jeannie is our Democratic analyst and democracy visiting fellow at Harvard Kennedy School's Ash Center. Rick, is this a strategy to just own it?
I'm not sure what he's owning. I mean, he talked about, well, I barely know this guy, Nick Fuentes, except that he had dinner with him at Mar-a-Lago that blew up during the campaign.
Yeah.
And he says people have to decide. That last clip you just said. And I'm like, decide about what? Whether Nick Fuentes is a racist anti-Semite? I mean, or anti-Semitism is bad? I mean, like, what is it we're undecided about here? And the thing is, it's not that Tucker Carlson interviewed the guy. On its own, Tucker Carlson should be able to interview anybody he wants to. I mean, for heaven's sakes, he interviewed Vladimir Putin in Moscow. But at the end of the day, it's the fact that he didn't challenge Nick Fuentes on any of his racist, anti-Semite comments. And so that's the backlash. There are MAGA people in an uproar that Tucker Carlson has been, helping this guy by not challenging him.
Well, Jeannie, I mean, can you address this sort of free speech argument here? I mean, Trump is saying, let's just air this out. Let's let him have his due. He can interview whoever he wants to. And to Rick's point, he has interviewed some pretty controversial characters and given a platform to others. I mean, do you think this has legs at all, the Fuentes argument? Or is this just going to kind of go away and then in lieu of it, we'll talk Epstein because there are bigger fish to fry on that front?
Yeah, this has been what Tucker Carlson has been saying to put himself and in a victim position, essentially, is, they are trying to cancel me and not let me interview who I want to interview. And the reality is nobody is saying he can't interview Nick Fuentes or anybody else. There is a long history, as you know, Michelle, of reporters interviewing the worst type of people. But it is the way in which that went forward and how he embraced, how he, as Ben Shapiro called, glossed Nick Fuentes, how he went on there and described Christian Zionists as the worst people in the world, how he hugged Nick Fuentes. That's what people are objecting to. And I think what we heard from Donald Trump in both of these stories is something pretty sad for Donald Trump, which is a surrender to the worst parts of this MAGA coalition. In both cases, as much as Donald Trump wants to yell at Marjorie Taylor Greene and say, I am MAGA, I created it, I know what they want, he is being led around by the chain from the most extreme elements of this coalition, and he has zero control over it. He can't get them not to release the Epstein files, and he can't even denounce Nick Fuentes, who, as was noted, he ate with Kanye West, much to the chagrin of many on his own team during the campaign. So Donald Trump is losing control of his own MAGA group, and he can cry to the wind, but these are two sure signs of it.
Wow, led by the chain. Jeannie's not mincing words today. Rick, what do you make of the Jeffrey Epstein salvo here on Truth Social? I mentioned it coming into our conversation. And you know how Washington is. Everyone's trying to figure out two steps ahead here, knowing that the president also dispatched his Department of Justice to investigate Democrats who were reportedly on the list here in the black book, like Bill Clinton, among others. Is this a way now for the Department of Justice to say, hey, sorry, it's an ongoing investigation. I know you voted to release the files, but we can't do that now?
Yeah, I mean, by the time the buck stops here on the president's desk, it may be sent back over to the Justice Department as you talk about it. I mean, look, Who knew on Friday night that this thing would breeze through, which may be a unanimous vote in the House of Representatives, something that took a discharge petition. Very unusual. I mean, almost unheard of in Washington that a group of members could overrule the Speaker of the House. And as a result, may turn out to be everyone voting for this thing. And it gets to the Senate, and everyone was saying on Friday, hey, no way is it going to get through the Senate. Oh, really? Donald Trump can get it through the Senate. All we need is 13 Republicans. You don't think he can get 13 Republicans? So, I mean, but then the question is, why in the world would he want it to get through if he has to sign it? The reality is, if he wants these released, all he has to do is pick up the phone, call his buddy Pam Bondi and say, release him. He has that power. He doesn't need Congress to sign off on that. Congress needs to sign off on that if they want it done over his head. So somebody's going to win, somebody's going to lose, and I sure don't want to place a bet on this one the way it's headed.
Well, Rick, just to build off that, I mean, if you're a political consultant in the White House right now, considering all these factors, considering what the DOJ might be able to do to protect the president, considering the writing on the wall that the House was already going to vote in favor, and perhaps the Senate too, as you mentioned, would you have said, hey, Mr. President, yeah, just say, let him free to vote for the release, knowing that there are risks here for the release for Donald Trump himself?
Well, that would assume that I was just brought in today, because I would have never suggested the track they've been on all this time. I think I'd have blown my brains out. So the reality is they should have dispatched with this a long time ago. Either had decided to get it out and done it themselves without any congressional activity, or had cold sweated enough Republicans to get off that discharge petition before it was signed off on. I mean, it looked like they just reacted at the last minute as if they didn't know this was coming. I mean, we've been talking about it for months. And so, yeah, I think that it's going to be the kind of thing now where it's not clear what the position is to take. I mean, I'm not sure I could take a poll today that said, hey, is it better or worse for Donald Trump to actually do this himself and preempt Congress, or let Congress roll him? Nobody buys this fact that he is now saying, oh, I'm for this now. I want everybody to get this word out. Because the reality is, you don't think there are going to be a massive number of redactions in this material? I mean, 1,000 FBI agents were dispatched earlier to go through this stuff and redact all the important names, Trump included, out of that material from what the reporting is. You don't think that's going to have a backlash if it gets out? So, look, I think we're just seeing the beginning of this story. This could take us all the way through to Christmas Day.
Incredible, Jeannie. Just the beginning. What happened to Donald Trump at the end of last week or over the weekend? He had Lauren Boebert in the Situation Room days earlier to peel her name off the discharge petition. Now he's urging everyone to vote for it?
Absolutely. I sat here on the show late Friday afternoon with a theory that I was told was a conspiracy theory, but not so much. Donald Trump has ordered an investigation of the Democrats. Tom Massey brought it up on ABC this weekend, saying it is a big smokescreen so he can allow Republicans, encourage them to vote for it, let it go through the Senate, let him sign it. He said in his statement, they will get what they are legally entitled to. And in fact, Bloomberg's Catherine Lucy asked the president about that over the weekend, saying, is this investigation a smokescreen, as Massey called it, so that those files will not be released? And look at his response to Catherine. You are fake news. He went on and on about fake news. That is a sure sign. This is Donald Trump's playbook. He did this before, as we remember, Joe. The IRS, he can't release his tax files because they are under audit. That is the same thing Pam Bondi will say about these files. So all that they're legally entitled to is all we will see. Not a conspiracy theory anymore, I will say.
Wow, this is a great panel today. It's only Monday. Think of where we'll be this time tomorrow. Jeannie Shanzano and Rick Davis, Bloomberg Politics contributors, bringing us analysis and truth every day here on Balance of Power. I'm Joe Mathieu, alongside Michelle Jamrisko, who's going to be back with us tomorrow on the program. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, happy to be here.
Stay out of trouble in the meantime, because we have much more trouble to find.
Stay with us on Balance of Power. We'll have much more coming up after this.
You're listening to the Bloomberg Balance of Power podcast. Catch us live weekdays at noon and 5 p.m. Eastern on Apple CarPlay and Android Auto with the Bloomberg Business app. Listen on demand wherever you get your podcasts, or watch us live on YouTube.
Boy, it's been a moving target recently, and Bitcoin has all of our attention today as the chart just looks broken. We talked about Bitcoin with Mike McGlone next week, and I think we got to do it again. Down $870 right now, about 1% to fall back below $93,000. And if you're a technician, this is a problem. If you're an investor who bought at 120 something, well, this is an even bigger problem. Mike McGlone covers commodities for us at Bloomberg Intelligence, our senior commodity strategist, and therefore owns the Bitcoin beat. It's great to see you, Mike, and I'm just trying to figure this out here. If we take a look at what's happening with gold today, it's still holding above $4,000 an ounce. So is Bitcoin the store of value we thought it was?
No, unfortunately. We're finding out it has a much higher correlation to the stock market, which some people consider a store of value, but it got way too expensive. And Joe, I really appreciate you putting Bitcoin and gold in the same sentence, because my old mantra used to be, well, you can't really hold gold anymore without some Bitcoin in that space with the word going digital. But sometimes it's better to overweight gold. And that's been the case since last year, certainly since Mr. Trump was elected and since ETFs were launched. So right now, Bitcoin's hovering around 92,000. It was up 34% on the year. Now it's down. The key question is, was it due into the end of the year? I think it's going to go a lot lower, unfortunately. I don't think it's going to stay above 100,000, and it could bring a lot of things down with it. And one key indicator for that is the ounces of gold equal to one Bitcoin. It's been a great leading indicator. It's just broken down through key support. Right now it's about 22.7. The high was 35 and key support was 25. So it's breaking down. And Joe, also key to remember, it's the end of the year where potentially this is the time of year we get position squaring and people hitting stops. I'll end with one key thing. The Bloomberg Galaxy Crypto Index was up about 30% on the year. Now it's down about 12% a year. So hitting stops.
Wow. How much do we need to worry about the technical factors here? Is there support in the 70,000 or 77,000 range here, Mike, or is the chart broken to the point where it doesn't matter now?
Well, it's always going to matter. We initially bounced from 100,000. I think the next key level is around 84,000. But the key thing is that we have to talk about technicals because there's no fundamental underlying. There's no basis. Like, I trade crypto dollars. There's a basis. I trade crude oil futures, and there's a basis. There's nothing in these 27 million cryptos. And I think that's what's happening, Joe. We're finding out, yes, a lot of this was pie in the sky hubris, and now we're getting towards the realization that it's just potentially a start of a bear market. And Bitcoin's a big one, but here's the key thing to remember. There was only one in 2009, and now there's about 27 million of them. Unlimited supply of these things.
How about that? Well, you wonder about some of the forecasts. I think Tom Lee had it around $250,000. I think Kathy Wood's got like $1 million price target in 5 years or something. I don't know how you can even issue a forecast when you're in the throes of this kind of volatility. But I'm curious, Mike, what does this mean for the treasury companies, these crypto treasury companies like Strategy and others that have promised an even better hedge on crypto, sort of crypto on steroids? They're going down hard with this too.
Exactly. Strategy is one of the worst performing stocks this year. I know Michael Saylor well. He was one of my key indicators, got me bullish Bitcoin around 10,000 in 2020 when he turned toward Bitcoin. But what he did is he doubled down on the 10X. He double dog dared the market gods with a 10X. It's not a good idea. So it's starting to lead the way lower. But the key thing to remember about crypto treasuries is it's an oxymoron. Treasuries should be in the same sentence as treasuries. It doesn't make sense. And I just look at this as a classic stuff. So here's what I think is going to end up my book someday, Joe. It's going to either read that this time was different or this time wasn't different. I think it's going to be this time wasn't different. And we're going to look back at all these silly crypto things as just pie in the sky things like pets.com in 1999.
Can I get the first interview when the book comes out? I'm looking forward to that. Mike McGlone, Bloomberg Intelligence, senior commodity strategist. Thank you, Mike. We'll keep tabs on Bitcoin for you. Like I said, we're below $93,000 right now, down more than 0.6%. President Trump is putting the apron back on this evening. I'm just assuming that's what happened the last time he had a McDonald's event. The Impact Summit, hosted by McDonald's here in Washington, is going to draw the president. This is an event that he'll be attending a little bit later on, I believe within the White House campus. I don't know what the venue is going to be here, but he's going to be talking about his affordability message, of course, with an audience of McDonald's owners and operators and suppliers who are all coming together. His favorite restaurant chain, knowing he loves a Big Mac and a Diet Coke, Loved making the fries, too, when he was at McDonald's on the campaign trail. So this one's got our attention, knowing that this is such an important message for the president, affordability. It's not just food. After the president issued those exemptions on tariffs last week on everything from beef to cocoa to bananas, it's also health care. And this is what draws our attention to our conversation with Congresswoman Gwen Moore, knowing that we've got a couple of weeks to figure something out here, either to extend Obamacare premiums, having reopened the government, or if you ask the president, recraft the entire healthcare system in the United States. I suppose a third option would be doing nothing. But here's what the president said about this over the weekend.
We're negotiating with lawmakers, and I've had personal talks with some Democrats. I can't tell you who they are. I just don't want to do that. It's not fair to them. About paying large amounts of dollars back to the people.
Maybe he's talking to Gwen Moore, the Congresswoman from Wisconsin's 4th District, Democrat, with us live from Capitol Hill. Congresswoman, it's great to see you. Welcome back to Bloomberg TV and radio. Have you received any overtures from Republicans when it comes to negotiating health care?
I have not received any overtures, nor have I in the entire time that I've been in Congress and since we've passed the Affordable Care Act, gotten any sort of alternatives to the ACA, also known as Obamacare. And with regard to the president giving us all a couple of $1,000s for our health savings account, last time I checked, that really didn't work. Last time I checked, and I've been around for a while, people have had these health care plans, as it were, that barely cost anything, had high deductibles, didn't provide any health care at all, and it looks like Obamacare is on life support right now.
Well, if we do not see an extension of these COVID-era subsidies that we've been talking about straight through the shutdown, this is a big reason why Democrats and Republicans could not get on the same page. What happens to people in Wisconsin? This is something that could cause premiums to double or quadruple, depending on where you are.
Yeah, that's true. 114%, and that's an average. But it's even more than that. I had a conversation with folks this weekend, and they've been seeing and listening to something other than the TV commercials and Republican and Democratic talking points. They are actually getting the proposals in the mail. And they can see that they've gone from paying, $150 for coverage to like $800 a month for coverage. Just a couple of people I talked to this weekend. So the whole notion that costs are going down under President Trump's administration, and they're going to have an alternative. I mean, people are not stupid. They are experiencing this shift.
Congresswoman, the president, you might have heard me mention, is going to be having an event with McDonald's owners and operators this evening. And we've heard from McDonald's just a couple of weeks ago in its earnings report, and it told us that low-income customers were actually falling off its list of customers, and that people with more money were trading down. If we're in a world now, I don't know if you prefer an extra value meal or the dollar menu at McDonald's, Congresswoman, but if we're in a world where low-income people are not able to afford a $1 meal or whatever it costs for an extra value meal at McDonald's, what does that tell us about where we are here in the affordability conversation?
Well, the extra value meals are no longer an extra value. Of course, I fed my kids, my grandkids on McDonald's. And I mean, this is one of the canaries in the coal mine. When you can't afford to just drive through without being concerned that you're spending your kids' lunch money for the whole week, when you drive through one time, that's a measurement of people's well-being. People don't have to discern whether or not they can afford a lobster. When you can't take your kids drive through McDonald's, you're in trouble.
Well, that might be where we are here, depending on how this all works out. Congresswoman, the president is putting exemptions on certain food items when it comes to tariffs. If you're with us on Bloomberg TV, you can see him reaching out of the drive-through window there from the campaign trail. What are we going to see happen to prices when it comes to food and energy in the weeks ahead?
Well, price volatility, the way it goes, I don't know that people are going to experience those drops right away. A lot of these tariffs have been baked into the economy. I have one vendor in my district, and I won't mention the name, but they bought some equipment to expand their business. Those tariffs have been paid, and they've already had to either pay them or bake them into the price of their product. I mean, you can't just hit the undo button on everything. And I think that that's where we are. Our farmers in Wisconsin, I represent Milwaukee, but I'm very sensitive to the farm-to-table catastrophe. Our farmers have completely lost all their markets for their soybeans to China. You can't just hit the undo button and snap your fingers and have that return.
The next vote you might take, from what we understand, is on this discharge petition to release the Epstein files, Congresswoman. The president has turned a 180 on this to tell Republicans to vote for it. So this could pass, we understand, with a pretty remarkable vote tomorrow. I'm wondering if you expect a unanimous result, and to what extent this has hit your conference as a Democrat.
Well, I can tell you, if the president has told Republicans to vote for it, I'm sure they will. Of course, this is a defensive tactic on his part, because what he'll do is he'll say that, we're investigating this thing. We're looking at what Democrats, Larry Summers or Bill Clinton has done. We're investigating it. So therefore, the Justice Department just can't release the information. The bottom line is that the President of the United States does not want his relationship with Epstein, which, is extensive and over long periods of time and is at least embarrassing to come out.
Well, we'll have a lot more to learn about this, I guess, in the days ahead, Congresswoman. That's Gwen Moore, live on Capitol Hill, the Democrat from Milwaukee, Wisconsin's 4th District, talking with us live here on Bloomberg TV and radio. We should mention Larry Summers is a paid contributor to Bloomberg TV, and we'll have a lot more on this conversation as we move forward here on Bloomberg TV and radio.
Thanks for listening to the Balance of Power podcast. Make sure to subscribe if you haven't already at Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. And you can find us live every weekday from Washington, D.C. at noontime Eastern at Bloomberg.com.